Hi and welcome. I'm Eric Charles, and we're here to interview Dr. Jim Garrow with Pink Pagoda Project. How do you do, Doctor? How are you doing?
How are you?
Excellent.
Great. You look great.
Well, thank you. So do you. Can you tell us about the Pink Pagoda Project, what it is and what is it that you do?
Well, we save baby girls from infanticide or gendercide, as I like to call it, as much as I want to call it anything nice. And what it is really is we discovered that in China, they really do kill baby girls, not just abortion, but they kill baby girls who are live birthed. And that's because of the one-child policy and the preference culturally for having a male. And so I ended up getting involved in saving baby girls through one of my employees who was faced with that. Her sister was faced with it. And we saved that one baby, and the next thing you know, we're saving 2 and 4 and 10 and 44,000 babies later, 12 and a half years later. Actually, it's almost 13 years, I'm sorry. We're coming up for May, so it'll be 13 years in May.
Wow. So how is it that you were able to save these girls?
Well, we actually take them from the parents, who, by the way, give us written permission to do that. We get signed off, documentation signed by the parents, giving us their child, knowing that we're going to give it up for adoption, knowing that they will not see that child again. And because they, rather than kill it, of course, mom, they don't want to kill their babies. So mom generally is the one pushing for this. And I think they're just more than willing to save the life. And I can't blame them one bit.
Absolutely. Do you know what actually happens with dead babies? We often hear stories in China of them using them for cosmetics, as unbelievable as that sounds. Are you aware of what they do with the aborted fetus?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I am. I don't want to say. You name it. If it's possible to use a human part, that's what they do. And there is a whole industry, a crooked industry in body parts, in specific parts of the body. In fact, one of the people who advised me and actually wrote an endorsement of the book is on the Medical Ethics Committee for the World Health Organization and also UNESCO. Dr. A.B., we'll call him A.B. to protect his name, he's a Muslim from Iran who knows what they do with prisoners, mostly Christian prisoners, for example. I know this is getting into another part, but they do many different things that are just totally abysmal, and what they do with baby bodies is just as bad.
That's incredible. And what is the book that you wrote? What's the title, if you can tell us?
Oh, sorry, yes, it's called The Pink Pagoda, and it's my story about my quest to end gendercide in China. And it's being very well received all over. It's a hard book. It's a tough one to even talk through with all the interviews that we've done, because it's very emotive, and of course it drags back for me the emotions I felt as I faced much of what I did in doing this. So you're lucky I'm not blubbering yet.
Recently there was a report, I believe it came out from the health czar, about how it would be bioethically okay to kill children up to 2 years old. I mean, they talk about the human rights abuses in China, and they're well documented. Do you see kind of an engrossing human right abuse happening here in the Western world?
Absolutely. In fact, there was an ethicist back in the 60s who actually predicted this, along with your Surgeon General, a gentleman named C. Everett Koop, along with the Dr. Francis Schaeffer, who ended up making his home in L'Abri, Switzerland. But what he warned was of the slippery slope. The philosophy that would allow an abortion to take place would ultimately lead to infanticide and then eugenics as well as euthanasia. So selecting a person for death because of skin color, possibly, because of gender, or even age or infirmity. So it ends up that once you go down the road of playing God, you play God everywhere.
Who would you say is really harboring or engineering the philosophy of eugenics? Who do you think's pushing for this movement towards infanticide?
Well, eugenics, for example, the person who started Planned Parenthood actually is Margaret Sanger, the founder of that movement. Really, she was trying to control the black population. She was quite racist. And people are actually shocked when you tell them that. And, you know, they argue till they're blue in the face that this cannot be. But in fact, when you look at the history and look what she said, it's quite abysmal, quite shocking. We're not used to these kinds of statements today.
Right, and we do see a proliferation of these ideas. Margaret Sanger, of course, friends with Hitler, the Rockefeller Foundation. Can you speak to that? Do you see a big influence of the Rockefeller Foundation inside China pushing a one-child policy?
Well, I think what we see are foundations and groups of men and women around the world who believe that the population needs to be controlled rather than allowing it to grow naturally. Of course, that all comes out of the belief that the world is not really sustainable with people in it.
Okay.
So we're the problem, according to them, rather than accepting the fact that the globe has been built to sustain itself and that we have minimal effect in the overall picture of things. So yes, there are people out there. There are people who believe in huge conspiracies. I happen to believe that there are, in fact, huge conspiracies. People who are conspiring together to, in the end, I believe it's driven by the need for power and greed. That's, you know, it's interesting that you're asking the questions the way you are, because you don't really know me, and yet you're hitting bells for me.
Right, I think it's just we have a spirit for humanity, and obviously you're doing great work saving human lives. Have you run into any dangers politically or physically going into China and kind of combating their child policy?
Yes, I have. I've had the good fortune to have a member, a very senior member of the intelligence corps of the People's Liberation Army and the Communist Party, who basically put his arm around me and told me I was doing a good thing, and that he didn't want to see me killed, but I was headed in that direction. And he wanted to help me make what I was doing more effective and to keep us safe, specifically myself safe, but also the organization that we had begun to build. It was only 2.5 years old when I met, I call him Yoda, only because of the way he presented himself to me at the very beginning. He looked like a little tramp, and he certainly wasn't, believe me. But to me, he was a godsend. He was a real, an intervention that I absolutely needed. And it made it sustainable. It made it something that was workable and effective, far more effective after he joined us than when I had bumbled my way through 3,000 savings of babies, you know. And now we're into 44,000 babies saved. But to me, it's the brilliant work of Yoda, and later on his son, after Yoda died, his son joined us. So we've been most fortunate in the people who've been attracted to us.
You know, I guarantee humanity appreciates the work you're doing. 44,000 babies, that's a huge amount, a huge population. But compared to 7 billion people, it's very, very small. Do you have any overlying messages to people to kind of wake them up and to understand what kind of attack humanity's under by people who wish to reduce the population? I guess we call them Malthusians.
Yes, that's one word for them, yes. Well, you know, I think what we need to do at all points in time is measure the moral fiber of the things that are being thrust at us, or the trends that we see in society. We need to stand firm and say this is wrong when we see it being wrong. So we need to be brave. We need to stand up. I'm not sure what your belief is in terms of God or religious belief, or whether you have one or not. But whatever your belief system is, certainly the sustainability of humanity is part of it, and the brotherhood of man. I mean, we are, in fact, in this together. And I believe wholeheartedly that I am my brother's keeper. I am the one who should be the one to stand up and save, as I am with babies, but to save many more. 44,000 is a drop in the bucket when they're killing 8 million a year. So, we need to do everything we possibly can. And by the way, you know something? It has totally changed my view of, for example, buying an automobile. I can't spend $30,000 because I'm looking at 30 babies. That's what that costs, the lives of 30 babies. Or a $100,000 home, that's 100 babies. So my economy of scale has changed me totally now.
Do you see the trend towards a recession and a depression? Is that helping this globalist cabal endorse their one-child policy in different countries around the world?
Well, we're headed that way. America, for example, has embraced some things that I think the founding fathers would be spinning, not just turning over, they'd be spinning in their graves if they could see what's happened and the directions things have gone. It's almost as if right has become wrong, and we're topsy-turvy. For example, the loss of individual freedom. All of these things are being stripped away in the country, and unfortunately, once it's gone, there's very few government programs that ever stop. They just continue.
It seems to be the problem, specifically democide, and I guess that's how you'd label one-child policy.
Yes. Yeah, we call it gendercide because it ends up being the female that's bearing the brunt of this cruelness. But the whole thing started in 1979 based on a myth, two myths. One was the myth of sustainability of the society, that they were starving, and that they were starving as a result of having too many people in China. That's false. In fact, what it was policies put in place by Mao Zedong and then Deng Xiaoping that ended up starving the people because they put people through this leap forward, the cultural leap forward, the great leap forward, they call it. It was actually a great disaster. Right. But they ended up stripping people from government positions, intellectual positions, positions where there needed to be real skills, and throwing them out into the hinterlands to farm as punishment.
Yes.
As some, humbling them. What happened was they starved to death, and the people around them who were hoping to get food grown by them, they starved to death as well. So it was government a misunderstanding of things and putting in place rotten, silly policies that ended up destroying that generation of people.
Right. Well, we're glad to see that you're a hero for the struggle for humanity. Thank you so much for this interview. Can you tell us once again what your website is and what your book is so people can come visit your work?
Well, the book is The Pink Pagoda, and you can find us on Facebook. Look up The Pink Pagoda under book, and like us if you would, because apparently that's important. And the actual website is www.pinkpagoda.org. And there's not much there, but there will be a lot more. And by the way, we're starting a program for little girls. It's called Pink Pagoda Girls, Girls Saving Girls. And we're encouraging young girls to join up through whatever, their schools or their churches, whatever, and raise $1,000, because that's what it costs us to save a baby girl, $1,000. And they can do it by committing to $30 a month or 60 or 90, whatever. One girl, two girls, three girls. And doing that for 3 years, man, we can save millions. That's my project right now. My aim, to raise $1 billion and save 1 million babies.
Well, there you have it. Dr. Jim Garrow, an extraordinary